Hello, I'm so glad you're here. You've now completed your first draft of your Bible study. Now it's time for the really fun part, editing. This might be obvious, but I want to say it anyway. Before you start editing, make sure that you have a fully completed first draft. Okay, maybe editing isn't the most fun part, but it's definitely the most important part. So I would presume that the hardest part of editing is this part, taking a break from your work, the act of figuratively or literally sticking it in a drawer for a week or two or longer. You want to let your draft rest for a while and let your mind move on from the work that you just completed. This is a great time to work on some other projects that you've been ignoring for a while, or to find some alpha readers and let them take a look at your manuscript. So a quick little hint about alpha readers: give them very, very, very specific guidelines of what you want from them. If you don't do that, you might find their feedback to be less than helpful because it's too nitpicky. Your alphas might start giving you feedback on spelling and grammar, and that's not what you're looking for from an alpha. So make sure that you give them exactly what you're looking for. But I'll talk about that in a different video. When it actually comes time to edit, make a plan. If you don't have a lot of free time during the day, then set yourself some daily goals or weekly goals that you want to achieve. Whether you want to edit a chapter a day, half a chapter a day, 3 pages a day, a chapter a week, something that's achievable and manageable, and write it down to help you stay on track. I love spreadsheets. I put everything in a spreadsheet. In my first run of editing, I take into consideration the feedback of my alpha readers. What I asked for my alphas was a quick read through for content and clarity. I got some really good feedback from my alphas. You repeat the same phrase over and over. I don't think this example appeals to men and women the way you want it to. This paragraph is confusing. I had to read it several times before I understood what you were trying to say. This transition is really abrupt. I incorporated their feedback, which in some places involved quite a bit of editing. There were some places that I had to add in extra verses, I had to take some things out, I had to scrap an example that I had spent some time trying to make not weird, and it was still just really weird, so I had to take that whole thing out. I'm part of a writers group on Facebook, and something that we say really often in our group is when a reader tells you something is wrong, they're almost always right. When they tell you how to fix it, they're almost always wrong. Descriptive, what is there. Prescriptive, what to do about it. This is a really important distinction. I'm really grateful for the descriptive feedback that they give me, and I'll consider the prescriptive advice, but I don't often do what they suggest I do. So all that's to say that you should be firm in continuing in your direction. It's your study, you know what you want it to say. Keep going in your direction. So after going through your alpha feedback, it's important to take another rest period. You can either do that by sticking it in a drawer, or you could do kind of what I did. So when I was going through incorporating my alpha feedback, I went through one chapter at a time and I incorporated what they said. By the time I'd gotten to my last chapter and went back to the first chapter, it was all fresh again. So you can do it in that way too, so that you're still continuing to work and still feeling like you're making progress, but giving your brain a rest from your study as you go. In my second editing run, I go through with a fine-tooth comb, paragraph by paragraph, editing for content. This is the most time-consuming edit because I'm going painstakingly slow. I'm making sure that things say what I want them to say, how I want them to say it. Does it make sense? Does it flow from one section to the next? Do I need to add examples? Do I need to delete examples? Do I need to add Bible verses? Do I need to delete Bible verses? Where are all those extra little words I throw in everywhere? I also look at the Bible verses and see if the point I was trying to make is actually supported by those verses, or if I tried to do it the other way around, if I tried to squeeze the verse into making my point. It's really important that you get this one right. So take your time there. Editing a pantsed manuscript takes a lot of work and generally involves a lot of deleting. Sometimes you just want to keep that section because you spent a long time on it and you feel a little emotionally invested with it, but trust your editing gut and just delete it. You can cry about it later. It's okay that the early chapters aren't anything like what you wanted them to be. Don't be discouraged. You didn't work from an outline, you didn't necessarily know what you had in mind. Your work evolves as you go when you're pantsing. So that's why it takes a lot of deleting, and sometimes it sucks. I generally end up taking out a lot of early content and pretty much rewriting everything so that the early stuff matches the later stuff. This is the time that you refine all those sentences and you take out all those little words that you use. I tend to use that and really and just a lot. They are everywhere in my early drafts, and so I just need to take all of them out. In the end, once you take them out, it flows so much better, trust me. Then I work on transitions. Sometimes I do a really good job, but a lot of times I'm really abrupt because I know what I'm thinking in my mind, but I don't always convey it quite as well on paper. So sometimes I have really big jumps from point A to point B, and in my head it's completely logical, but my readers read it and they have no idea how I went from A to B. And so I have to retrace my steps a little bit and put like A and a half in there so that there's some stepping stones from A to B. I have yet to have an alpha reader not point out one of my big jump transitions. That's why alphas are amazing and you should use one. This is also where I look for additional verses. I have this Bible that's called a Thompson Chain Study Bible. I have it right here. This guy is great because it uses the Bible to study the Bible. So if you don't have one, you should get one. Sometimes I decide I want an entirely new section based on some verses I've run across in the meantime in my study Bible. And other times I want to make a new point based on alpha feedback that I've gotten. When I'm editing, because I have a pretty busy life with kids and dogs and things, I can only get through one chapter a day, and that's perfectly fine for me. It's okay to stray from your goals a little bit. If you had planned to get through one a day but you miss a day, it's okay. Take a deep breath and just pick up where you left off. It's not the end of the world, even though I get it. I promise. I feel a lot of pressure to stay on top of my goals and my targets, and so when I don't get them, I totally get that feel of, I was supposed to edit a chapter today and I never did it. It's okay. Take a breath. Tomorrow's a new day. Your study's not going anywhere. It'll still be there. You can just pick right back up where you left off. It'll be fine. Sometimes I just don't feel like editing because I feel really tapped out mentally. And that's also a really good reason to take a break. If you find yourself staring at your screen, just slack-jawed and glazed over, it's a big sign that your brain isn't ready to edit. So step away, come back to it when you feel fresh. Don't force yourself to edit when you're feeling drained. It'll just make for extra work that you have to do later. Better to just walk away and not do anything at all. So after I finished my really big edit, I once again set it aside for a little bit so that I can reset, and then I go back through one last time for a final edit. It's a really light edit because I've already done the majority of the work. If I tried to edit everything all at one time, it would be really overwhelming and it would be hard to actually find all of the mistakes because I'd be trying to look in too many areas at one time. So this is the editing process that works for me. I break it down into manageable chunks and I just move on one day after another. Maybe this process will work for you too, and maybe it won't. That's okay. Maybe it will be a launching point for you to develop your own editing process. The thing that's really important here is that you find a process that works for you and works with your brain. Don't skip the editing phase. Your first draft sucks too. Mine was terrible. Editing is where it all gets really, really nice. And don't get stuck editing before you've ever finished your first draft. Stop doing that. You can always find me here on Facebook and Instagram at Carrie Jellick Author. You can also go to my website at carriejellick.com where I post complimentary blog information. New videos are on Tuesday, new blogs are on Wednesdays. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on... As always, I'd love to hear your feedback and any questions you have on what I've said. Thanks for watching. Go forth and write.